While America doubles down on oil and gas, China just became something the world has never seen before. An electrostate. Not a superpower built on fossil fuels like Saudi Arabia or Russia, but a nation powered almost entirely by electricity from the sun, wind, and batteries. And it's happening at a scale that's almost impossible to comprehend. In 2024 alone, China spent $625 billion on clean energy. That's more than the entire GDP of Sweden. They installed enough solar panels to power 55 large nuclear reactors. They built wind farms larger than entire countries. Meanwhile, the United States is racing in the opposite direction, slashing renewable energy programs, expanding oil drilling, becoming what experts are now calling a Petrostate. Two superpowers, two completely different energy futures. And whoever wins this race won't just control energy. They'll control the global economy, artificial intelligence, and the balance of power for the next century. So how did we get here? And what does China know that America doesn't? We spent weeks analyzing energy data, tracking investments, and consulting geopolitical experts. What we discovered reveals the biggest power shift of the 21st century, and almost nobody is talking about it. Section 1. What is an electrostate? Let me show you what's actually happening. For over a century, the world's most powerful nations have been petrostates, countries whose economies run on fossil fuels: oil, gas, coal. Saudi Arabia, Russia, even the United States. These nations extract fossil fuels from the ground, burn them for energy, and sell the excess to other countries. Their economies rise and fall with oil prices. Their foreign policies revolve around securing energy resources. But China is building something entirely different: an electrostate. An economy powered not by what you dig out of the ground, but by what you generate from the sun, wind, and water. And the numbers are staggering. By 2024, renewable energy accounted for over 56% of China's total power generation capacity. That's higher than any major industrial economy in history. Solar and wind? China now leads the world in both, not by a little, by an overwhelming margin. In 2024, China installed 275 gigawatts of solar capacity. To put that in perspective, that's more than twice the total annual electricity output of Australia. And they added 80 gigawatts of wind power in the same year, more than most countries have installed in their entire history. But here's what makes this truly revolutionary. China isn't just generating electricity from renewables. They're building the infrastructure to store it, transmit it, and export the technology to the rest of the world. Battery storage in China tripled in just 3 years. Grid investment rose by 22% in a single year. They're not experimenting anymore. This is industrialization at a scale the world has never witnessed. And while the West debates climate policy, China is quietly becoming the first major economy where electricity, not oil, is the foundation of national power. Section 2. The numbers that will shock you. Let's talk about the investments that are reshaping global power. $625 billion. That's what China spent on clean energy in 2024 alone. To understand how massive that is, consider this. That represents 31% of all global clean energy investment. One country, nearly a third of the world's total. The United States? They spent a fraction of that. And under the current administration, funding for renewable energy programs is being slashed at alarming rates. China's investment isn't just about volume, it's about speed. In the first half of 2025, wind generation in China was 16% higher than the previous year. Solar generation? Up 43%. Clean energy growth in China is now outpacing electricity demand growth. That means fossil fuel generation is actually declining. For the first time in decades, China's coal and gas plants are producing less electricity than the year before. Let that sink in. The world's largest manufacturing economy is reducing fossil fuel use while growing its industrial output. And they're not stopping. By 2030, China plans to double its renewable power generation from current levels. They're on track to completely displace fossil fuels from their electricity supply within a decade. But the real game changer? China's clean energy sector now contributes $1.9 trillion to their national economy annually. That's roughly equivalent to the entire GDP of Australia. And this sector is growing 3 times faster than China's overall economy. This isn't just an energy transition, it's an economic revolution. Section 3. Critical minerals, the new oil. But China's electrostate dominance doesn't stop at solar panels and wind turbines. They've quietly secured control over something even more valuable: the raw materials needed to build the electric future. Critical minerals, rare earths, lithium, cobalt, graphite. These are the elements that power batteries, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and advanced electronics. Without them, the energy transition can't happen, and China controls nearly all of them. Let's start with rare earth elements. These are 17 metallic elements essential for high-tech products, including wind turbines, solar panels, electric vehicles, and military hardware. China processes 90% of the world's rare earths. 90%? They didn't achieve this by accident. In the 1990s, while Western countries shut down their processing facilities due to environmental concerns, China invested heavily. They built the infrastructure, trained the workforce, absorbed the environmental costs. Today, even the rare earths mined in the United States have to be shipped to China for processing, then shipped back as finished products. But it gets worse. Lithium, the critical element for every electric vehicle battery. China refines 70% of global lithium supply. Cobalt, essential for battery stability. China controls the supply chain. About 70% of all mined cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And who owns most of those mines? Chinese companies. Graphite, used in battery anodes. China controls 90% of battery-grade graphite production. By 2030, China will dominate nearly 60% of all critical mineral refining, across lithium, rare earths, cobalt, and graphite. Think about what this means. Every electric vehicle, every solar panel, every wind turbine, every battery storage system, they all depend on materials processed in China. The world is shifting from oil dependence to mineral dependence, and China positioned itself decades ago to control that shift. This is the new oil. Except this time, one country controls nearly the entire supply chain. Section 4. AI plus energy equals dominance. Now, let's connect the dots to something even bigger: artificial intelligence. AI is the most important technology of the 21st century. It will determine which countries lead in innovation, military power, and economic growth. But AI has one critical requirement: energy, massive amounts of it. Training advanced AI models requires enormous computing power, and computing power requires electricity. Data centers are now among the largest consumers of electricity in the world, and that demand is exploding. China recognized this years ago. They've made it compulsory that more than 80% of electricity consumed by newly built data centers in national hub regions comes from renewable sources. Why? Because they understand something fundamental. Whoever controls cheap, abundant, clean energy will win the AI race. And China is building that infrastructure right now. Meanwhile, the United States is betting on natural gas to power its data centers. But there's a problem. Gas turbines face supply bottlenecks, prices fluctuate, and reliance on fossil fuels makes long-term energy costs unpredictable. China's approach? Lock in cheap, renewable energy, scale it to meet AI demand, and use that advantage to dominate the industries of the future. This isn't just about energy. It's about who controls the technologies that will define the next century. And China is positioning itself to win. Section 5. The Global South is choosing sides. Here's something most people don't realize. The competition between China and the United States isn't just playing out in Beijing and Washington. It's happening across Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And the global South is making a choice. For decades, developing countries had two options for energy infrastructure. Either buy expensive American technology and rely on fossil fuel imports, or stay in energy poverty. China changed that equation. They're now exporting solar panels, wind turbines, and battery systems at prices Western companies can't match. In the past decade, solar panel costs have dropped by 80%. Why? Because Chinese manufacturers scaled production to unprecedented levels. This has allowed countries in South and Southeast Asia, East Africa, and Latin America to leapfrog directly into renewable energy, bypassing fossil fuels entirely. Think about what this means geopolitically. These countries are no longer dependent on oil imports. They're not beholden to petrostates. They're building energy independence. And who's supplying the technology? China. Chinese companies now account for 75% of global clean energy patent applications. In 2000, that figure was just 5%. They're not just exporting products, they're exporting an entire energy model, and countries are choosing it. Not because of ideology, but because it's cheaper, faster, and makes economic sense. This is how influence is built in the 21st century. Not through military bases or oil deals, but through infrastructure, technology, and economic partnerships. And China is winning. Section 6. America's Petrostate Path. So what is the United States doing while all of this unfolds? They're going in the opposite direction. Under the current administration, the United States has positioned itself as what analysts are now calling a petrostate. The US is already the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas, and the government is aggressively expanding fossil fuel production. In 2025, the administration announced plans to increase oil drilling on federal lands. They've rolled back vehicle fuel efficiency standards. They've slashed funding for renewable energy programs, and they're pressuring other countries to buy American oil and gas instead of investing in renewables. But here's the problem. The world is moving away from fossil fuels, not because of climate activism, but because renewables are now cheaper. Solar and wind are the lowest cost sources of new electricity in most of the world. Battery storage costs have fallen by 7 times in just 7 years. The economics have shifted, and they're not shifting back. Meanwhile, the US is doubling down on an energy source that's becoming less competitive every year. And while the US focuses on extracting more oil, China is cornering the market on the technologies that will replace it. Think about the long-term consequences. The US is betting its economic future on fossil fuels just as the world transitions away from them. It's a strategic miscalculation of historic proportions, and it's creating vulnerabilities that didn't exist before. Dependence on volatile oil prices, exposure to global supply disruptions, and falling behind in the industries that will define the next century. China, meanwhile, is reducing its dependence on oil imports, lowering energy costs, and building export markets for the technologies the world will need. 2 countries, 2 completely different strategies, and one is positioned for long-term dominance. Section 7. What this means for your future. Let's talk about what all of this means, not just for governments, but for you. Energy has always been the foundation of power. In the 19th century, it was coal. In the 20th century, it was oil. In the 21st century, it will be electricity. Clean, cheap, abundant electricity. And the country that controls the production, storage, and distribution of that electricity will shape the global order. China is building that system right now, at a scale and speed no other nation can match. They're not just transitioning their own energy system, they're exporting that transition to the rest of the world. And in doing so, they're creating dependencies. Countries that rely on Chinese solar panels, Chinese batteries, Chinese rare earth processing. This isn't just about climate change, it's about economic power, technological leadership, and global influence. The United States, meanwhile, is clinging to a system built on fossil fuels, a system that's becoming less competitive, less secure, and less influential. If this trend continues, the balance of power will shift dramatically. China will control the supply chains for electric vehicles, renewable energy, and advanced technologies. They'll set the standards, dictate the terms, and shape the rules. The United States will be left trying to compete in markets where China already dominates. This is the defining geopolitical competition of our time. And right now, China is winning. Conclusion. So what did China actually discover? Not just a way to generate electricity without burning fossil fuels, but a pathway to reshape global power. They identified the technologies that would define the 21st century, and they invested in them. Aggressively, strategically, relentlessly. While other countries debated climate policy, China built the factories, trained the engineers, secured the supply chains. And now, they're reaping the rewards. The first electrostate in history. A nation where clean electricity powers industry, transportation, and innovation. Meanwhile, the United States is choosing a different path. One built on fossil fuels. One that's increasingly out of step with where the world is heading. The question isn't whether the energy transition will happen. It's already happening. The question is, who will control it? Who will benefit from it? And who will be left behind? Right now, the answer is clear. China is building the future, and the United States is stuck in the past. This isn't just about energy, it's about power, influence, and the shape of the world for decades to come. And what we do now, the choices we make, the investments we prioritize, will determine whether we're part of that future or watching it unfold from the sidelines. The race is on, and the stakes have never been higher. What do you think? Is China's Electrostate model the future? Or can the United States catch up? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more content on global power shifts and the technologies reshaping our world, subscribe to The Global Build. Until next time.